Welcome to the debate. We are diving straight into the deep end today, focusing on those absolutely critical opening moments of Titanverse Chronicles, Episode 1, The Emergence. Specifically, the instant that Leviathan, the Alpha Abyssal, and Magmox, the Terran Behemoth, both appear and just shatter everything.
Yeah, it's a scenario that throws humanity's global defense force into an impossible situation, right? Instantly. It's more than just tactics. It's a fundamental test of who we are as a species when faced with something so monumental.
Exactly. So when the GDF witnesses that unbelievable destruction unfolding in Tokyo Bay, the core question just forms itself. Should humanity go straight for a military response? Treat these titans purely as an existential threat needing immediate neutralization? Or is there an ethical, maybe even an intellectual duty to pause, to push past the fear and try to figure out if they're part of some larger planetary system we just don't get yet?
Well, I'm going to argue that the data, specifically the analysis coming from Dr. Tanaka and GDF Command, it points strongly towards needing some intellectual humility here. What we saw emerge wasn't necessarily an attack on us. It looks more like a complex internal planetary system kicking into gear. Curiosity, not conflict, should be the driver.
And I'll be taking the position that the sheer scale of destruction we see happening right there, right then, defines these titans as an unacceptable hazard, period. Survival ethics, basic survival, demands we fight back. Waiting around for a translation while cities crumble, that's a risk we simply cannot afford to take. My stance, it's grounded in what I see as military and ethical realism. The Titans' power to destroy, whatever their ultimate reason might be, makes them an existential threat by definition. When something causes that much collateral damage just by existing or moving, the damage itself becomes the threat. We don't need a motive, we just need to measure the impact. And we see this play out immediately, right? Leviathan surfaces. Major Rostova's Aegis Squadron gets the order. Scramble to engage. That initial military gut reaction, it's the right one. Rostova gets it. You don't wait to understand the hurricane after it's already flattened your city.
And the proof is stark in Act 3, that collision between Leviathan and Magmox. The shockwave just leveled the harbor in a single devastating clash. That's not subtle. That's overwhelming force obliterating human infrastructure, our very ability to function. So Rostova's mindset, the only good Titan is a dead one, it isn't born from cruelty. It's just, it feels like the only responsible position when you're facing something that treats human civilization like an inconvenience, or worse, as the intel sometimes suggests, an infestation to be cleared. Hesitating in that moment, it's a luxury that costs lives.
Okay, I understand that perspective, the immediacy of it. But I'm coming at this from a fundamentally different angle. One that tries to look past the immediate shock, the fear, and actually focuses on the underlying patterns in the data. Because what emerges doesn't look like a planned invasion of us. It looks like, the sudden violent start of what you could almost call kaiju geopolitics. My core argument is this. The analysis from GDF Command strongly suggests the Titans' actions are driven by their own conflict. It's about resources, territory, this deep-seated rivalry between the Abyssals from the deep sea and the Terrans from the land. It's not primarily aimed at humanity. So if that's true, our survival might actually depend on understanding this bizarre economy they operate in, rather than just throwing our limited military might against forces that, frankly, seem beyond our comprehension. And we really can't just brush aside Dr. Kenji Tanaka's realization, that moment he looks at the combat data and says, they aren't here for us, they are here for each other. That single insight, it potentially reframes everything. It suggests the GDF, the city, all of it. It was essentially collateral damage in a duel between giants. Their motivation wasn't centered on humans at all.
Right. And, the nature of these factions seems to back this up, too. The Terrans are supposedly trying to reclaim and restore the planet. Even Leviathan's appearance, that eerie bioluminescence, creating a false dawn. It suggests something more profound. Maybe environmental, not just military aggression.
It leads directly to Dr. Aris Throin's point. We need translation before termination.
We have to shift from thinking like soldiers to thinking like, well, like planetary scientists, maybe even diplomats in a very strange new world.
I get the appeal of that, the elegance of the scientific explanation. I really do. But the jump you're asking us to make from seeing Tokyo Bay get obliterated to adopting strategic patience, it feels reckless. You label the destruction collateral damage, but I have to insist, the destruction is the threat. Full stop. Rostova's squadron went in because the mere presence of these Alpha Titans, causing quakes, throwing destroyers around like a toy boat, that's an immediate, undeniable risk to millions. How many lives are we ethically okay with sacrificing just to test Dr. Tanaka's hypothesis that they're maybe just indifferent to us? When indifference leads to mass casualties, the practical difference between indifference and hostility feels like zero. Survival ethics have to put self-preservation first when you're facing that kind of raw, immediate power.
But isn't that where the, let's call it intellectual cowardice comes in? Judging these beings, forces, judging them solely by our own human-centric view of damage? If we entertain the lore for a second that the Terrans are some ancient force trying to restore a planetary balance, maybe one humanity disrupted, then attacking them isn't self-defense. It could actually be seen as, well, as ecological terrorism. You're potentially attacking something vital to the planet's health just because it's messing up our immediate structures.
And critically, your argument about inherent hostility, it kind of falls apart when you look at what the Titans did. As soon as Magmox showed up, what happened? They ignored the GDF jets. Completely. They focused entirely on each other. In that moment, the GDF was, quote, no longer the primary target. So the initial military fight, it was instantly proven futile. Their indifference was towards us, yes, but their focus was elsewhere. That shift in focus, that's the strategic opening we need to explore, not ignore. Fighting them directly seems like wasting resources on the wrong problem if they're just going to ignore us to fight each other.
An opening measured in seconds, maybe minutes before one turns its attention back? I appreciate the nuance about intention versus result, but military planning has to prioritize the result. You're essentially betting humanity's future on a very optimistic interpretation of some complex light patterns.
I wouldn't call it a gamble. I'd call it the only strategy left that isn't guaranteed annihilation. The source material itself shows that the GDF's first military response was, well, utterly ineffective. Rostova's shoot-first approach didn't stop anything. It just highlighted how insignificant humanity was in this conflict. Like tiny insects in a war of gods. That kind of reality check should force a strategic pivot, shouldn't it? Not just digging in deeper with tactics that clearly failed. Only Dr. Thorne's path, trying to understand their communication, those rune flicker patterns that seem to form a grammar-like structure, only that offers any hope of finding a way to influence things, or maybe even coexist. It's about moving past pure reaction, pure fear, and towards understanding. We likely can't beat them in a straight fight, so we have to find another way. We have to try and understand their language, whatever form it takes.
But this strategic necessity you're talking about, it assumes we have the time that the immediate threat clearly isn't giving us. I'm just not convinced this measured analytical approach properly accounts for sudden, unpredictable violence. When Magmox and Leviathan slam into each other with the force of an asteroid strike, pausing to analyze runes while millions are still in the evacuation zone, that feels like a catastrophic risk. Rostova, whatever her past trauma, represents basic military common sense here. She's not acting blindly. The text calls her the woman who won't hesitate again, implying lessons learned from past failures where hesitation costs lives. Dr. Tanaka, the man who trusts the numbers, his approach doesn't fully grapple with the immediate zero-sum reality of survival in that moment. Military realism says you neutralize the immediate threat if you possibly can, rather than wait for the Abyssal and the Terran to sort out their geopolitical spat. How many cities fall while Dr. Thorne built his Titan dictionary?
The flaw in that military realism, though, is the assumption that neutralization is even on the table. The second they clashed, they showed power that dwarfed anything humanity could bring to bear. So the question isn't really, should we wait for translation? It's more like, Can we possibly survive without trying to translate? Continuing to fight a hopeless battle seems like guaranteeing our own destruction. Seeking understanding? Yeah, it's risky, but it offers at least a chance of survival, however small.
Okay, I can concede the point about the immediate effectiveness of the military response being severely limited. But the reason for trying to engage was sound: protect human life right now. Even if we accept the tactical futility, the sheer impact of the emergence forces us into the deeper question of sovereignty. Look, whether the Titans are acting like some kind of planetary immune system or they're part of a complex economy we don't understand, the result is the same. They are fundamentally reshaping Earth's geography and ecology for their purposes. Terran terraforming, abyssal consuming, it leads to massive global changes. We see it later with coastal flooding, huge tectonic shifts. That directly violates human sovereignty, human safety. Humanity isn't just some infestation to be cleared away. We built civilizations here. We have a right to exist as the dominant, self-governing species on this planet without being arbitrarily displaced or destroyed by forces operating on some entirely different alien agenda. The military response isn't just about stopping damage. It's a defense of our right to exist, of civilization itself.
I'm sorry, but that whole concept of human sovereignty, it starts to feel like a very fragile, almost romantic notion when you're facing forces that operate on geological and evolutionary timescales. The emergence itself screamed that these titans move to a rhythm that makes all of recorded human history look like a flicker, a blink.
So your appeal to sovereignty, it's deeply anthropocentric. It ignores the signs of profound, organized purpose. That bioluminescence wasn't random flashing. The pulses were organized. The structural patterns Thorne starts noticing, they hint at a level of coordination that just operates completely outside our human frameworks of nations and borders. Arguing about sovereignty feels like debating whether a single person has the right to stop continental drift. Humanity needs to adopt Dr. Thorne's mindset, the empath. We have to find some way to fit in, maybe find a niche as observers, maybe even arbiters if we get really smart about it. Because fighting a geological force, or whatever these titans truly represent, it's clearly futile. Our only real shot is figuring out how to integrate into this terrifyingly vast new planetary economy.
But if fitting into that economy means accepting the systematic destruction of our coastal cities, the constant disruption of everything we've built, then we have no ethical choice but to resist. We can acknowledge their immense power, their ancient nature, sure, but we still have to assert our right to protect the only home, the only civilization we have. Accepting being merely collateral damage is basically accepting our own irrelevance and eventually our extinction. We have to fight just to stay relevant in our own world.
And fighting might just guarantee that extinction faster. The tension it's palpable, and it clearly paralyzes the GDF right at its core in those opening moments.
Yeah, on one hand, you have this screaming immediate need for military action. That's Rostova's world. Mitigate the catastrophe, save lives now, deal with the infrastructure collapse. That's the urgent tactical reality staring you in the face.
And on the other hand, you have the strategic necessity of intellectual curiosity. That's Tanaka and Thorne's contribution. The long-term reality is that we're facing something profoundly alien, operating on a planetary scale. Survival might absolutely depend on understanding it, not just shooting at it.
The emergence basically slams humanity with the realization of its own precariousness. We're not the main characters in this drama, it seems. We're just caught in the crossfire. And that decision, whether to react with immediate aggression born of fear, or try to find understanding through intellectual humility, that choice dictates whether humanity just remains an obstacle to be cleared away, or maybe, just maybe, find some new, probably terrifying, role in this planet's monstrously evolving ecosystem.
Exactly. Does the GDF pull the trigger based on that primal fear? Or can they manage, somehow, to listen for the language of these new forces, driven by curiosity? That remains the central, terrifying, strategic, and ethical question posed by Titanverse Chronicles right from the start. Both arguments have weight, both draw directly from that initial, devastating clash in Tokyo Bay. There's no easy answer.